this exciting meeting for posterity here. So we're 5 after the hour. I might go ahead and start in here. I know that Rick Nelson is not able to join from the Plains and Prairie Pothole region. Looks like we got Kevin Johnson on. I did speak with other LCC folks earlier this week. I wasn't sure who would be able to make it, but fewer people than I anticipated. But at any rate, here we go. Might as well just kick in with it. Warren, do you want? So what we got? I guess I just looking at the participants on the WebEx. Gary Davis with Bureau of Reclamation up in Billings, Justin Derner with the USDA, Kevin Johnson, Fish and Wildlife Service in the Southern Rockies LCC Science Coordinator, and Warren Day, Chair of the Stakeholder Advisory Group, and Geneva Chung.
Well, I mean, I think we've all been on the phone together before. I offered to Jeff that at least try and MC this dialogue so that he and Justin don't have to carry the whole load. And in that role, I want to thank you for joining this, taking the time today. This does represent a potential model for a way forward to be efficient in engaging the stakeholder communities for both the hubs and the Climate Science Center. It's an experiment that Jeff and Justin put together, and it'll be fun to see how this unfolds. The thrust of which is to try and minimize the stakeholder, quote, fatigue, unquote, and maximize everybody's participation. Jeff and Justin have been very open with the proposed list of agency participants, and people will vote with their feet as to how they participate and see the way forward with this. So with that, Jeff, maybe we could do, although we've talked to each other yet, maybe we could do round robins of who's on the phone and what agency you're with and what role you're playing in the context of this phone call. I'll go first. My name is Warren Day. I think I've met all of you guys. Anyway, I'm currently with the Office of the Regional Director here in the Southwest region, and I'm the Deputy Regional Director for Science.
Yeah, thanks, Warren. Appreciate it. And maybe I can just say, as the director for the North Central Climate Science Center, I've been doing this for 2012, and then maybe Geneva, and then we'll go to the other folks outside of USGS.
Okay, good morning. My name is Geneva Chong, and I've been working half-time with the North Central Climate Science Center. Just completed my second year and focused on capacity building, and that has entailed working some on our interaction with the National Conservation Training Center to offer climate-related courses to managers and stakeholders, and then also currently shifting focus or emphasis a little bit to work with our America View and State View partnerships related to measuring and monitoring phenology using phenocams, and that is connected as well to our capacity building, such as with tribal phenology monitoring and also the sort of program development, capacity building, education and outreach, and the science of phenology.
Thanks. Sounds like maybe somebody else joined by phone.
Yeah, hi, Jeff. This is Kate Kitchell with BLM.
Hi, Kate. How are you?
I'm good. Sorry I'm late.
Maybe we'll have Gary. You can introduce. We're just kind of going around with quick introductions, and maybe Gary Davis, you could introduce yourself, and then we'll go to maybe Justin and then Kate.
Okay, Gary Davis. I'm an environmental specialist with the Bureau of Reclamation in the Great Plains Regional Office in Billings, and I am representing our regional director on the Stakeholder Advisory Committee.
Okay, thanks. And then maybe Justin, then Kevin, and then Kate. I guess we'll do that order.
Hey, Justin there. I'm the research leader for the Rangeland unit here in Cheyenne, as well as Fort Collins, Colorado. And for 9 months, I've been the director of the new USDA Northern Plains Regional Climate Hub. And I want to thank everybody for your help and participation. And I think this is a landmark event for Jeff and myself trying to get a combined stakeholder group. And I think it's something clearly that's being watched among the other regional climate hubs to how to best do this. So again, thanks for your help and appreciation ahead of time.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Justin. And then maybe Kate, and then, no, Kevin, and then Kate.
Yeah, hi, this is Kevin Johnson. I'm a coordinator for the Southern Rockies LCC, and I am stationed down here in Denver. And we have 3 climate science centers that we interact with, that being the North Central, the South Central, and the Southwest climate science centers.
Okay, great. Yep, and trying to stay warm too, I guess. And then maybe Kate, you could say hello.
Sure. Good morning, everybody. This is Kate Kitchell. I'm the Associate State Director for BLM in Billings, Montana for Montana and Dakotas. And it's been a while since I've connected with you all, so it's good to hear folks' voices. And in Billings, we too are trying to stay warm.
Right on. Okay, well, let me jump into the slides here that kind of go through the agenda for today. Sort of a fairly brief, but that last point being kind of substantial. I wanted to give an update. There was a university consortium meeting with the North Central back in September. I think we're making good progress on the coordination there, but kind of one thing that came out from that was possibly a slight adjustment to the mission, and you'll see that I kind of articulated. We're working, USGS and CSC are working on an open science conference. There's been some save the date email that have come out on that, but I'll go into some details. And then maybe spend kind of most of the time on this USDA DOI Joint Stakeholder Committee that Justin and I have been working on. So digging into this sort of written at the bottom is a bit of an addition to the mission. The current mission is to provide the best possible climate science to Department of Interior land managers. One of the things that was discussed with the university was kind of a two-way street of going, okay, well, we're bringing the science to the land managers, but these university folks are for the most part, they're engaged in this not because we have tens of millions of dollars, but rather they really want their research to be applicable for the most part. And they were kind of saying, maybe we should think about articulating that in the mission to say that in the second half of the statement, provide the university researchers an opportunity to work with the engaged and proactive applied management community. And that's like the people that we have on the line, Kate and Gary and Justin, these people that know that there's climate science out there, looking to engage with it and willing to work with them. So I guess I'll just pause and see if people think that's a reasonable addition to the mission.
Yeah, Jeff, this is Kate. I love it.
Okay. Yeah, it's not. I don't think we're changing. It's not like we're changing course. It's just kind of adding something a little bit more explicitly that we've been doing. Okay. Any other comments on it? All right. Well, kind of assume that might be okay. And obviously, when we revise our 5-year science agenda, which is probably coming up in a year or so, maybe making this explicit. Maybe I'll send an email to the Stakeholder Advisory Committee just to let anybody who has any concerns voice them individually or by email to the group. But it seems to me a pretty logical extension of what we've been doing and just kind of getting it down in some words. Okay. the background on the open science meeting, I just kind of said, you know, Dennis Ojima is working on inviting Department of Interior Secretary Jewell. That's kind of trying to get a big name to kick off the conference. But it will be May 20th through 22nd, with Monday and Tuesday reserved, the 18th and 19th, for early career professionals. They will be a chance for sort of graduate students, postdocs, or you know, environmental professionals, kind of trying to introduce them to the science that we're doing, maybe a little networking, and kind of we started calling it a training, but it's really more of a survey of the work that we're doing. But it should be informative, and we'll be kind of targeting those folks that might be able to come for that full week. But it really does, I think, relevant to the stakeholder advisory group in this first bullet point on what it really is trying to bring the stakeholders, the resource managers, to the conference, even having kind of joint paired presentations that would be kind of where the science was and how it was used. Abstract submission will be coming up in December, January timeframe for that, so I just ask people to stay tuned and to save the dates if you and others around are interested in attending that. You can write to me if you want more information, but I think if you dig through your inbox, you'll see, or in your mail, that there was a save the date, and you could please forward that to others. It's an open conference. We're expecting anywhere from 100 to 200 people, trying to accommodate that size, and kind of making it a pretty substantial event with the research and the management community, possibly having a special issue of a journal to kind of capture all in a citable source the science and information that's presented there. Any questions on that? Okay, so let me move on to the third item as far as a joint stakeholder group. The headquarters for the USGS, National Climate Change Wildlife Science Center, has revised and just kind of refined what they're calling the terms of reference for the stakeholder groups, kind of as it got to be 3 years into the operation of saying, okay, it was never all that formally documented, so this is sort of, I'm not sure if I would call it revised, but actually, initial terms of reference. There were drafts of previous things, but they sort of just kind of focused on, kind of laid out the purpose, which is management priorities, meeting the science needs, roles and responsibilities, kind of clarified that the input's kind of non-binding. It is really just to counsel, and I can pull up that document. We can look at that in more detail if needed. Membership, really focusing on federal, state, and tribal representatives in some ways to avoid the Federal Advisory Committee Act by having kind of people outside of those groups, but also recognizing that these do cover the primary stakeholders, and hoping that these stakeholders then reach out to others. For example, if the LCCs are on the Stakeholder Advisory Committee, to say and assume that maybe there's other state agencies and maybe private sector that's working with the LCCs, and kind of take advantage of that networking. The membership does say input of the non-governmental parties can be is definitely legitimate and is expected, but just that they can't be official members, and then that if executives, regional offices are valued, but certainly understand that could be delegated down to somebody who's more engaged in climate science and maybe communicating with an executive level person, but that might have more participation by somebody if it could be delegated down to someone more focused on the climate issues. And then allowing for webinars such as this, but face-to-face meetings are good. one of the things laid out in there, because it's now in the third year and they really didn't want to make these things be a life sentence, as somebody signed up to do it 4 years ago, they have an option to sort of not continue, as kind of like started setting up, I think, 2 to 3 year terms. I think it's up to each CSC kind of how they were laying those out, and then allowing the person to kind of step out after that first term, but also allowing the term to be renewed if the person is engaged and wants to stay involved, and then has been participating. They could stay in, and it does allow that if it's a two-way street. If there's been minimal engagement, that somebody else could be invited for that next term. So Warren mentioned this, and it's kind of the main kind of why a joint stakeholder committee would be useful, is that there's two things really, is that we want to coordinate and make sure that the hub knows what the CSC is doing and vice versa, and that a lot of times these regional issues are competing resources, or at least interrelated in the landscape context, and it probably makes sense to know what each other are doing. And then maybe in a more practical sense that, I think everybody saw like a new set of hubs coming out, or a new set of regional climate science centers coming on, and thought, okay, now we've got twice as many meetings to go to. The hope would be for people like Gary Davis and Kate and Kevin, the LCCs, is that instead of adding another meeting to your list of kind of advisory committee, that we could sort of maybe at least reduce it by one by joining what we do between the USDA and DOI and the stakeholder group. We laid out in kind of a description of this joint committee. The purpose is providing the guidance, coordination, and collaboration for the work of the two regional centers, and then facilitate this communication, awareness. And these are very similar to what we've been doing with the stakeholder group and what those other CSC terms of reference described. And then, that maybe we can aid in the consolidation of the priorities between the various groups. The proposed membership, again, I think this makes it fairly similar to what we've been doing with the North Central Climate Science Center, leaving, as you see in the middle, a substantial kind of DOI contingent there with those listed. I think we've added maybe 2 slots for EPA, whereas on the current board or the current executive stakeholder group for the North Central, there's just 1 EPA person. I don't think we currently have anybody from FEMA. We do have folks from Corps of Engineers, no one from NASA, but that's my experience has been with NASA. That's where I was for 10 years before coming to USGS. And there's a big remote sensing contingent or component at Eros Data Center, and we thought that might be worth pursuing. 2 tribal representatives, and this is a little bit of a difference. I think we have kind of currently Forest Service and ARS on the Climate Science Center Stakeholder Advisory Group, but this would add a few other USDA places or agencies, and then the proposal is for a co-chair from Agricultural Research Service, and then we would have kind of an ex officio sort of in their roles with the leader of the Western Water Assessment, Regional Integrated Science and Assessment, kind of bringing in NOAA and research contingent there, as well as the university leader at the North Central, currently Dennis Ojima. This would currently be Dennis Ojima and Lisa Dilling, and then Justin from the USDA Hub and myself in our positions with DOI and USDA regional centers. And that's all I had. I can stop for questions. I've also got the documents of the terms of reference from this is the National Climate Science Center's terms of reference. Maybe before I open it up for conversation, hold out that, you know, there's the Executive Climate Change Executive Roundtable is not the same thing we're doing here as a joint group, but it is somewhat different from what was laid out. It was an existing group, and the Alaska Climate Science Center kind of just attached itself to this ACER as its stakeholder group. And I kind of highlighted that there to pull out that the national office is, you know, kind of has allowed for these cases to exist as the stakeholder advisory group for the CSCs, and just to that again, this is normally be chaired, but then this exception is ACER with it's chaired by a rotating membership, and then it allows for co-chairs to be identified. So that is really just to say what we're doing is not inconsistent with what the national office is requiring. One more point is that we started this out in conversation with Doug Cluck at NOAA, and the work that they're doing, you know, quite a bit of work in the region, and we wanted to coordinate with them. The issue, though, was that NOAA and these groups are not mandated to have a stakeholder committee, whereas the USDA hub and the climate science centers are specified and mandated to do it. And we thought, let's start with those places that have a mandate to do it, so we make sure we get it by our upper level management to test this out. Keeping an eye on possibility of maybe having this a joint stakeholder group with NOAA, but at the very least, as you see in the beginning, and the list of this membership, NOAA would be kind of represented on the stakeholder board. So maybe, Justin, I don't know if you have any kind of thing to add from the USDA side.
No, Jeff. Other than we've got support up the line management and in the hub structure for this sort of operation. Again, I think it's you know, it's a test case for the hubs, and we're looking at it, you know, again, as a nice synergistic opportunity to engage stakeholders without, again, that fatigue issue. And I think, you know, given the synergistic relationships of working land and wildlife and natural resources, it makes much sense for us to be having this group come together in one nice format here. So I want to thank you, Jeff, for helping us lead this charge up the chain.
Yeah, certainly, and Justin, too, has been very amenable to kind of making this, being flexible with this. I have brought it to the North Central and USGS management, and they were excited to see it as a pilot. They think that, you know, they want to make sure it works, and they don't want this to be more work for anybody or the wrong work for anyone. So suggested that we do it as a pilot, test the waters, but indeed go forward with it. I guess one question that's come up, and I think Justin has some answers to it. I have some answers. I think it's hard to bring in the private sector because of the Federal Advisory Committee Act structure, and it's probably more important that the DOI, the USGS hub, figures out how to interact with public because of the working lands mission for the USDA. And I've talked with Justin a bit about handling that, and I don't know if you could mention it just in case that's sort of you know, something people are thinking about.
Jeff, you mean specifically working with private individuals or so forth?
Yeah, I think you're still planning. My understanding is you're still planning to do that, but the advisory, the stakeholder committee would just be feds, and you would have other mechanisms through the extension programs or other USDA programs, and indeed they would be probably represented through the membership that would show up there through USDA to bring that to represent those constituents. But yet only having the feds on the panel or on the committee. Yeah.
I think the way we've kind of looked at it is this is our stakeholder committee, Jeff, and then we will have some, I guess for lack of a better term, key contact persons also kept in a loop, and those would be represented by Cooperative Extension, Departments of Agriculture in the states, other key organizations, and then that's how we would try to keep communications without trying to circumvent the FACA issues there for the stakeholder group.
And does that also, does FACA also apply for like states? Meaning, you know, is there an opportunity for state representation on the joint stakeholder advisory committee?
There is. You can have a state representative and not have to go to the FACA committee. However, because of the 7 or 8 if you bring in Iowa, or 9 if you bring in Minnesota in the Missouri River Basin, we have generally, I've kind of taken the tack that the LCCs are more connected with the state wildlife agencies and use that connection to bring in the states. I think if we started to allow state representatives on this committee, it would, you know, it might grow too big, or an alternative is to, you know, to kind of rotate through, and I certainly think we could consider that, and you know, maybe, and I did have mentioned that I think that with Doug Clark, who's would be a NOAA representative on the committee, would be tasked. He said he's willing to lead with the state climatologists. So those are not state employees. So that's in most cases they're university folks. But that's kind of an example of saying, okay, not just state people, but particular state people, that Doug Cluck and NOAA would maybe kind of give an update at each stakeholder meeting of any news from the state climatologists. And I think we could think about a little bit more structure in how the LCCs or some other way we get state wildlife agencies issues brought to the table, either rotating through state wildlife agencies or through the LCCs or other representatives on the stakeholder group.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to have the, you know, the LCCs participate in that role rather than, you know, opening up the membership to, you know, 8 or 9, however many states it is, additional, you know, folks.
Yeah.
I was just curious about the states in FACA. I am also curious on the DOI agencies. I noticed BLM and the Park Service, 2 significant land managers, are not represented.
Yeah, and you know, this is a year in progress, and I'm not exactly sure I could relay strong logic as to why not.
Well, I don't mean to put you on the spot, Jeff. I just noticed that you know, they're not there, and so I've just, I guess, raised that. That's all.
It is a good point.
Well, this is Kate. I kind of noticed that too. And don't understand why BLM and the Park Service aren't on there. And I think from BLM's perspective, we would have an interest in having the opportunity to be at the table. You know, chiming in on this whole concept, I like the idea of this joint stakeholder group for the reasons that have already been stated. And it does seem to me that it also reflects the management realities for those of us that are, you know, doing the management on the ground, that we work across our, you know, our jurisdictional boundaries very closely between DOI and USDA organizations. From a BLM perspective, especially with the Forest Service and NRCS as key agriculture agencies. So, you know, I see this as an opportunity to connect the dots and leverage our priorities and, you know, create a forum where we're where we can come together and not have redundant stakeholder groups where all of us who are spread pretty thin have to be spread even thinner. So, I think that this is a good idea that's at least worth trying, but would also express an interest on BLM's behalf to be a part of the joint stakeholder advisory group.
Good point. I can't offer logic of why NPS and BLM are not on here, and I'm wondering, I'm kind of thinking it's an oversight.
Jeff, I think it might be my oversight. I think for some reason we started out with USDA having the 6, and you were trying to keep it in a very similar amount of representatives. But I fully support we ought to have BLM on there. They're going to be a major user of our Climate Hub information.
Yeah.
And same thing with Park Service. So I would highly support putting both of those entities on there.
This is Warren. Kate, I've got a question for you in just a second, but are we at a place here, Jeff, that we just add these 2 agencies during this initial discussion, take a vote or whatever?
Yeah.
I don't see any. I mean, of course, we want BLM and Park Service involved if they have the energy to do it.
Yeah, and we typically don't vote.
Yeah.
We could, but we could sort of, anyone opposed, speak up now. And one of the things to think about, I think we were juggling a little bit of kind of trying to keep it a manageable size, and then having it not too DOI slanted with USDA, kind of a balance with USDA. But along those lines, I would, logically, I would ask if maybe because of the representation and the folks with those LCCs are generally Fish Wildlife Service folks, that maybe the Fish Wildlife Service rep could be, we could eliminate that and hope that the LCCs would bring the Fish and Wildlife Service issues to the stakeholder group, thus sort of maybe a little bit of a balance and trade out, but then bring BLM and NPS representation in.
Well, the idea for the fish regional rep was to get somebody out of the regional office here in Denver, I guess, huh? Yeah, Steve. So, Kate, my question is, from your perspective, the BLM, who would be that representative? I mean, you have a big chunk of turf there. Is your office the correct one, or is there a regional person that should be invited as well, or how do you think that would work?
Yeah, it's a good question, Warren. I think that it would we'd probably still offer from Montana Dakotas to be the rep and the liaison in this context, but it would only be appropriate to circle back with the other states where the territory lies within their boundaries as well, and see if there's another entity that wants to step up and be the primary BLM liaison. So we'd probably circle back and, ask if there's anybody else out there who wants to take the lead. We really don't have explicitly a regional person. Our organization is more state-oriented, although BLM has sort of informally established what we call zones, and the zone that is most relevant here is the zone that encompasses Montana, Dakotas, Wyoming, and Colorado. So we do coordinate on a lot of things, and I think those are the main territories that are, that are involved with the area we're talking about here today. So, bottom line is it would probably still be someone from a state office that would represent BLM, whether that's Montana, Dakotas, Wyoming, or Colorado.
I doubt it'd be Colorado.
And I'm certainly, thanks. I think that we could, there could be a kind of a subgroup, or, they would know that they're coordinating with each other, and they could maybe pick a year, and somebody goes to, we have 2 or 3 calls a year, maybe one face-to-face, and you would hope that person whoever attends could stay in touch with the others and swap in and out as if schedules require it. I know like Geneva Chung and I kind of tag team on some of the Great Northern LCC work, and then she lets me know if she's able to attend, and if not, maybe I try to call in. So alternates are sort of certainly acceptable, and maybe actually would be something Justin and I and Warren and the ARS co-chair would really want to push for. I think that would open up those multiple people with BLM to be a part, or at least be aware of what's going on.
I would agree. You know, we do try to share information as it comes in with the appropriate contacts across the states, and try to have a backup if I'm not able to attend. I know Mike Philbin from time to time has chimed in. We do the same kind of backup in terms of participation at the LCC gatherings too. You know, if the lead manager can't be there, we'll coordinate across the states and make sure that we have at least a BLM rep present. So we do that kind of internal communication to share information that comes from the CSC, and then we coordinate to try to have some presence on calls and meetings as much as we can.
And Jeff, we're going to have to think about how to approach the Park Service too. You probably have ideas there.
Yeah. Yep. And they're currently on both are on the current stakeholder group. So we work closely with the Climate Change Response Program, which has a lot of folks and headquartered in or stationed in Fort Collins. So it's kind of that balance between that national climate change response program and regional representation with the Park Service. So yeah.
Hey, Jeff, this is Justin. One other group that's not on there is APHIS, and I know they're doing a lot of stuff that might be of interest across both your center and our hubs. And, you know, Larry Scott runs the National Wildlife Research Center down there in Fort Collins. He might be a very good person to add to this group just because of what they do and the type of information they can provide for both of us as well as use from both of us.
Yeah.
Not that I want to make it any bigger, but I do think that might be an entity that's missing again.
Yeah, that's what this calls for. I think that, you know, increasing it by 3 isn't. I don't think that's a showstopper or anything. We can't. I think increasing by 3 is certainly feasible. In my take on this.
Well,
yeah, and this is Kate again. You know, I do think that explicitly acknowledging establishing alternates is a good idea too. You know, to acknowledge that, you know, the agencies or the stakeholders should have a lead and can and probably should designate an alternate so that we have that continuity that sometimes is a challenge for us.
Yeah, I've made a note to really work on that. And I think what the next steps would be for Justin and I work with Warren, and then I don't know if you had a co-chair in mind from ARS, Justin, or if that still has to be figured out.
Yeah, I think that still needs to be figured out with Dr. Chandler, but I'll be seeing him on early next week. So.
Okay, because I think what we should think about is a letter from the 4 of us, whoever that ARS co-chair would be, to let people know here's the description of how it's moving forward. Here's the membership. You know, and then we could invite people to be members, and then ask them to suggest alternates, and then maybe even have a little bit more why. What we didn't really do, I haven't done in the previous years, is kind of like allow for, and I think we need to do this maybe in the stakeholder groups, is to ask a little bit more like, okay, an update from that group of what they're doing with respect to climate and have a 2-hour meeting. It's been a little bit more of a information dump from what the North Central is doing as we get our legs underneath us. I think that I'm sure the group will be interested to know what USDA is doing as it gets stood up, but we're a little more established. The Climate Science Center is a little more established now, and I'm really curious to have more of a report round robin, go through this list of what's showing here and see what's kind of concerning them with respect to climate and where some opportunities might be in the next 3 to 6 months, and ask people to report out on that. So a little more proactive role on hearing from those groups. And I think we'll try to describe that in the letter that goes out, describing the joint committee. So it sounds like there's at least a consensus of moving forward with this, noting the additions of BLM, Park Service, and APHIS, calling out for alternates in those groups, and then describing the expectations of them reporting out kind of what's going on in those regions and those agencies in future stakeholder calls, and looking to have a once-a-year face-to-face meeting with the group.
Sounds good.
Yeah, okay, well, that went well. There's a lot of things to think about with this thing, and between Warren and me, and I have, just as background, I've talked to all 4 of those LCCs, and they, just by the nature of DOI and the way the Climate Science Centers and LCCs were set up, are really, have been key and active participants, but they're amenable to this as well. I think they kind of had to do this meeting at a time when 3 of them can't join. I appreciate Kevin being on the call. And we've tried to think about this pretty carefully, and certainly seems like an idea worth at least testing. And so we would do it for a year or so, allow it's flexible. We're kind of making these committees and groups up as we go along, and so we are open to suggestions on how things could be improved, and any ways that it could be more productive for those that are members, and that we get the most out of it collectively that we can. It sounds like it's we'll move forward with it, and I appreciate everybody's comments. And now maybe it'll get above 10 degrees and we can all kind of go outside. Anything else before we close out?
Jeff, I'll go ahead and send the website, new website for us out to you if you'll distribute to this group for the regional climate hubs. And appreciate any input and suggestions on what we need to showcase, display of information, etc. So these are, I think, just announced 2 weeks ago. So by all means, let us know if we need to do some better and cooler stuff on those for the climate hub side.
Great. And since we still have 10 minutes before the top of the hour, not to take more time than we needed, but give the opportunity, I don't know if Gary, if Bureau of Rec has anything to report on. I don't want to put people on the spot, Kate or Kevin, on the kind of what's going on in the field. Always curious to hear in case there's something you can think of off the top of your head.
Well, I'll just mention that we had the Southern Rockies LCC had their steering committee meeting last week. And as part of that, we invited the Southwest USDA Climate Hub to come and present. And so the Deputy Director, Emily Elias, had come and give a presentation on some of the stuff that they're doing, and some of the work that she's doing independently of the Climate Hub, but just as part of her research, and invited her to, or invited the Southwest Climate Science Hub to be a member of the Southern Rockies LCC Steering Committee, and I did receive an email from Emily that said that she spoke with the Center Director and Al Rangel, and they are supportive of participating in the LCC.
That's good to hear.
I don't have anything specific that I can offer at this time. We've just been working quite a bit lately on the Lower Yellowstone Fish Passage project with the Corps of Engineers, and that's pretty much been taking all of my time. We've been working on it. I've been working on it personally for 20 years, and I don't think we're going to actually break ground before I retire next year, so we'll see how that goes.
Well, maybe piecemeal progress. You're chipping away, eh?
Yeah, bit by bit. Politics, obviously.
Yeah, wheels of government turn slowly. Good.
Yeah, so this is Kate from BLM. Off the top of my head, there are 3 things that I would share. First is our continued priority being placed on sage-grouse, greater sage-grouse planning and conservation. Folks may know that BLM has been in the process of amending or revising over 95 land use plans, which are our foundational plans for how we manage public lands. And that's a lot of plans. And we've been, working collaboratively with the states as well as with Fish and Wildlife Service and Forest Service and NRCS to revise our plans and have coordinated conservation strategies in place as regulatory mechanisms as the Fish and Wildlife Service embarks upon their listing decision for greater sage-grouse. So it's been a huge effort on the part of all of the agencies, including BLM, and a very complex one, as we're trying to facilitate some consistency across the landscape, but also, trying to factor in the realities that ecological settings, sociological settings are pretty variable across this huge landscape. So finding that right balance of incorporating science related to the ecosystems and facilitating consistency has been a huge challenge for the Bureau. And, it's an unprecedented event on part of all of the agencies, I think. And science will continue to play a key role in the conservation planning, as well as ultimately the monitoring and adaptive management that will come out of our plans as we implement them. So, and of course, climate change and the science associated with it will be an important source of information for us. So that's a biggie.
Yeah, I guess.
It's huge. Another thing that is sort of related is BLM has also been working on and is continuing to work on kind of revamping and revising our planning processes, primarily our land use planning processes. It's called Planning 2.0, which is really a term that represents our intentions to change the way we go about our resource management plans or our land use plans. And in relationship to that, our goals are, one, to try to have plans that we can complete more timely and are kind of more adaptable to change, because we often take so long in getting through these land use plans that the circumstances change before we actually finish and sign a plan. So we're trying to make our planning process more timely and nimble. The other thing that we are looking at as we revise this planning process is considering the way we define our planning area boundaries. Traditionally, BLM has defined those boundaries based on our office jurisdictions, whether that's a field office or a resource area office or a district office level, but they've been really focused on our administrative boundaries. And, like everybody, and under the emphasis at the secretary's level of looking more across the landscape. As we look at changing our planning processes, we're also thinking about changing our planning area boundaries, or at least the criteria we're applying for those planning area boundaries. And of course, this, I think, aligns well with the recognition that we need to look across the landscape to be able to manage more effectively and factor in adaptation to large landscape changes, some of which are driven by climate change. So, you know, as we look at those planning area boundaries, certainly one of the factors that we're taking into consideration is climate science. So that's the second issue. And then the third thing I will mention is that during the last year, well, actually the last couple years, BLM has been placing a lot of internal focus on developing and implementing strategies for more effectively accessing and integrating science into all of our core processes and decision making. And very soon, probably next week, we'll be rolling out with a strategy for advancing science-informed land management in BLM. It's a fairly simple strategy, which is intentional because we are so limited in resources, but it is a strategy which is really intended to facilitate more consistent access to and integration of science in all of our core processes, from planning to implementation to monitoring and overall adaptive management. So I've been the leader of that team in developing this strategy, which has been vetted internally and is going to be rolled out next week by the director. And a key part of that strategy is just continuing to build our partnerships with the scientific community, and to do that in a more consistent, deliberate way throughout the Bureau. And as we roll out that strategy, we'll be standing up a BLM National Science Committee to basically establish governance that commits to this goal of science integration. And on that science committee, we've identified 2 external science agency partners to serve as advisors and members of this committee. So we'll be reaching out and asking for representation from science agencies on this national committee. So Jeff, I'll be probably reaching out to you, or somebody will, to facilitate some nominees for those 2 slots on the Bureau's National Science Committee. So it's really pretty exciting. It's really building on a lot of successes in BLM over the years, where science has been effectively integrated into our work, from the Wyoming Landscape Conservation Initiative to our solar energy zones to sage grouse efforts. We're trying to highlight those successes and build upon them and make this a part of BLM's core culture.
So Kate, when this is rolled out tomorrow, I'm just wondering how to get access to this, how, you know, when it comes out, where a person could find it.
It will be posted on our National Operations Center website. Okay. There's a library at the National Operations Center that will post this strategy, and I can send it out to, maybe I can send it to you, Jeff, and could you share that with folks that are on the call?
Sure.
That would be, I'd appreciate that.
Sure, that's where the strategy is going to be posted, but that's sort of the first step in BLM establishing a kind of a science one-stop for our employees to help facilitate their connecting with partnerships like this one and with science providers.
I wonder, maybe we'll make a note, Justin and I, to see if you could spend 5 or 10 minutes at the next, at the initial, the kickoff joint stakeholder group call to kind of relay that, kind of summarize that plan and point people to where they can get more information.
Yep, be glad to. We're also working on, the strategy document's pretty short. It's really, I think that it's less than 25 pages, including the bibliography. But we're also working on a fact sheet that, is a snapshot of the overall strategy. So we'll make sure to make those links available through you all. And, we'll be reaching out, too, for participation in the Science Committee. A lot of it, honestly, is pretty internally focused. We're trying to align our efforts within the Bureau and make science more of a core part of the culture, which is in place in lots of places, but we want to try to establish this as a more consistent part of the culture. But ultimately, we also recognize that continuing to strengthen our science partnerships is absolutely critical for staying abreast of and accessing science information for our decision making.
Right.
So those are my 3 things.
That's neat, and it's definitely, I think the science centers and the hubs have an interest, and hopefully could contribute to that science strategy. So. And just as background,
yeah, Kate, Justin, that's very good news. I'm very excited. If you pick up any newspaper or ag product in Wyoming the last couple of weeks, BLM has been at the forefront of numerous articles related to some of your planning processes. So I'm glad to see that there's improvements or 2.0 coming out.
Yep.
Thank you.
And Kate, a question related to, as you can imagine, we actually had the solicitation, and we're reviewing full proposals on those. And as you imagine, there's some sage grouse related research that was proposed to us. And I think the review panel kind of had this question of how, this listing decision is kind of eminent, and, nothing we're going to fund that'll be, a 3-year project starting in 15 would be timely enough to address that. But I'm curious to know what BLM would think about, ongoing projects, because I'm sure that the story's not over. Once the decision's made, it almost is the beginning of the issue and the lawsuits and the challenges. So is that relevant to you if I were to fund sage grouse related work? Does that still plug in? Is it still something that you would see as useful?
Oh, absolutely. It probably depends on what the focus of the project is, but there still are plenty of gaps in our understanding. And like I mentioned in my quick little report, one of the challenges is having, more defensible understanding of the more localized habitat and sage grouse interactions. Much of the science to date has been pretty focused in the Great Basin, and that has steered the thinking about conservation strategies and habitat objectives. And we're finding places in Montana, for example, where there are birds in habitats, and they're thriving in habitats that don't really fit the standard perception of what quality sage grouse habitat entails. So, having that localized, defensible scientific understanding and longer-term monitoring and adaptive management ultimately, I think, will be a very important part of, our ongoing management. So it sort of depends, I guess, what the focus of the proposals are. But there are other gaps that exist as well as the one I was just talking about. So, I don't know if there is an opportunity for or a benefit from having a little bit of a input into just even the topical areas, Jeff. We could, and I would imagine, BLM's not the only entity that has those interests there. Fish and Wildlife Service has a key stake as well. So, if I can facilitate getting a little bit of input even on the topical areas, I'd be glad to try to help with that. And it may be too late. So whatever works on your end.
No, I think if these are funded, we're free to put caveats to say, and what you need to do is connect with or make sure so there's an awareness of, and let the investigators know that. So I probably will be taking up on that offer.
Super. And what I may end up doing is connecting you with with our biologists who can more explicitly define what our needs are.
Right.
Yep. Sure. Excellent.
Yeah. Good. Well, with that, we are at the top of the hour, a little past. I appreciate everybody's time. I will let anybody else if there's something to add. But say thank you. I think it was a good call. Good to hear those updates, and appreciate people being willing to explore this new joint stakeholder group. And we'll be in touch via email, and probably in not too long into the new year, try to set up a call with the new group in that new capacity or in that new arrangement.
Sounds good.
Thanks,
okay,
Jeff.
Thank you very much, folks.
Bye.
Thank you all.